Hey friends, welcome back. For today's video, we're going to be doing some sculpting. Yes, you heard that right. I actually had not realized my neighbor's dog is barking. I had not realized that it has been quite some time since I made a video in which I sculpt characters. The last one that I did was 5 months ago. And that was this one, and it wasn't very focused necessarily on sculpting per se, but yeah, it's been a minute. Anyway, I wanted to change that. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to close my windows and it's so hot up here. I might pass away. Let's hope everybody behaves. That poor doggy, get him inside. Wow, that doggy has a lot to say. My neighbors are yelling at their kids. Anyway, let me keep this intro short because everyone is losing their minds outside and it's too hot for that right now. All right, we're going to be sculpting some 3D characters, and I really wanted to do a set that was something different that I personally haven't seen before. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Someone has likely already made a set based off of this character, but I wanted to make my own, and that character in particular is Helga Pataki. If you are a fellow millennial, you'll likely know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, or if you're not a millennial, Helga Pataki is a character from Hey Arnold, and Hey Arnold for me honestly kind of signifies something, I don't know, just very wholesome in my life because unfortunately, I was one of those kids that was kind of raised by TV. My parents just worked a lot and we didn't have money for babysitters. So I kind of was my own babysitter. Anyway, I would come home from school and one of my comfort cartoons was actually Hey Arnold. And I do remember not being a big fan of Helga just because of how cranky she always was. I don't know, she was definitely a misunderstood character because now that I've seen a couple of Hey Arnold episodes, and I don't know, it just she had a lot to be angry about. I empathize with her a little bit. I also just finished watching the character analysis of Helga, and my instincts were correct. This poor kid in this cartoon, right? But this poor kid was being neglected, and I really related to that. And yeah, I just wanted to make a nail set that would kind of celebrate her and all of her quirkiness. As you know, or if you don't know, Helga had a shrine, her Arnold shrine, and I always thought it was kind of like a jump scare, whenever they would cut to her Arnold shrine in the episodes. It always looked different for some reason. Sometimes it was a slice of watermelon, other times it was like a football. One that stands out in particular, one iteration of the Arnold shrine head was one that was made up of gum. She was so weird. I love her. So I wanted to make a set kind of based off of that in particular. So yeah, we're gonna sculpt. This is what the sketch looks like. I do want this to be a cute set, so we're gonna be using cat eyes or some glitter. I'm also thinking of doing a little bit of airbrushing, but yeah. So if you want to hang out with me for a little bit, check out the Helga homage that I'm gonna be creating, then I hope that you'll keep on watching. So we're going to be making these as press-ons because if I were to do them on myself, that would take forever. So I'm going to do a little bit of prep work on these cover tips. These are long ovals, I believe. Usually when I make 3D sculpting sets, usually when I do any sculpting for my sets, I like to work on a longer cover tip than what I would actually wear because it just gives me a little more room to play with. And I also wanted them to not be very harsh, to stay with something a little more on the playful, softer kind of side. All right, so I'm just rounding out the cuticle here, and I'm also going to refine the tip just to get rid of that little tab at the tip. So kind of like this, and then once I'm ready to apply gel, I am going to prep them with a little bit of primer. So let me just go ahead and do that really quick. I don't think you'll need to see me do that much prep work because it's pretty straightforward. So we'll be back so that we can start applying the base colors. Okay, so I just looked everywhere in my collection and I don't seem to have the yellow that I need that is in my sketch. So instead, I'm gonna opt for airbrushing. According to my sketch, I'm gonna need 3 nails completely yellow. So it's the thumb, the middle nail, and the pinky. So since I'm going to be airbrushing, I do want to airbrush onto a matte surface. So I'm going to use my ceramic matte from Function of Vex, and I'm going to apply it to all 3 nails so that when I do airbrush, the paint has something to like grip onto. So let me do that. All right, Jerry's gonna help me with the rest of this video. It's been a minute since I filmed a video like this, but I feel like it kind of had to be done. Otherwise, it's just really complicated to film myself in real time and then also do what it is that I have to do on the set and be focused on either. I'm gonna walk you through the rest of what I did, okay? So as I said, I did want to make the 3 nails of this set yellow, but I wasn't thinking correctly for some reason, and I went straight in with the airbrush instead of painting the nails white beforehand. But that's basically what you should do if you want to airbrush a nail and you want that like opaque payoff, because otherwise it was going to look like a jelly kind of translucent yellow, and that was not the vibe, you know? Next up, I buffed the free edge of the nails all around, and I wanted to use a chrome tint over top, so I coated the nails and added the chrome. So then I layered a silver cat eye on top. I did add a wash of yellow jelly polish over top. You literally can't even see it. Like, it made me kind of sad because this gel polish in particular, it smells so bad, and it was all for nothing because it didn't make a difference. You win some, you lose some, I guess. So I only did it for that one nail, I think. Anyway, I went over that with a matte top coat and placed a couple of stencils on the nails. I was okay with how the hearts and stars came out, but I haven't played with my airbrush much, so I really need to pick it up again so that I can get that nice like airbrush effect. It's just that I have to lower the pressure of my airbrush, and then if I do, the paint doesn't come out and then it clogs, so it's like this whole thing. So I just kind of stuck with just stenciling on the hearts and stars fully, so not with that cute like airbrush effect, but just like paint them on, you know what I mean? Also, I did use washi tape to cover the rest of the nail while I airbrushed, which was such a great idea. It kept everything nice and neat and clean, which was ideal because there are a ton of steps to this set. So any chance that I can save some time, I will take it. I also like to salvage as many stencils as I possibly can whenever possible. It doesn't always work out, but I do have like a little sticker booklet that I use to keep all of the stencils that I'm trying to reuse and that are still kind of like in good shape. And I'm doing all of the base colors first. So that's what I'm doing here. I decided on the color palette by some of the screenshots and the pins that I saved on Pinterest. And I wanted a cat eye background on all of the nails. So of course I pulled out my Dvok Dark Night collection and I picked out a couple of gels from there. This one has the most perfect shift. Ugh, it's so beautiful. It has like a bluish tint, and then the reflect, like the magnet, has kind of like a yellowy shift to it. Oh my god. It was perfect. Literally what I envisioned for that nail in particular. And with these cat eye gels, you really do need to layer a couple of coats because I felt like one layer alone was sort of, I don't know, like it wasn't punchy enough, you know? I just apply like a general layer, cure it, and then I apply a second layer, and then I'll magnetize that coat, and then I can go ahead and cure it again. And I'm top coating the cat eye, although I am going to airbrush on top of these as well. I don't want to dull out the cat eye glitter. So I used a glossy top first, and then I layered the matte top coat over that. So it's the glossy top, and then the matte top, and then I airbrush, and then to seal everything in, I use top coat, like a glossy top coat again. So with this middle nail, I wanted to add a similar background as Helga's shrine. So that's basically what I'm doing here. I really should have only added like a little bit of orange to a base or a top gel, but instead I also used a bright yellow gel, which just like it covered the cat eye. I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, so if I had only used the orange, I could have kept the cat eye glitter effect instead of covering it up, which is what I did. I also feel like I should have added something to the bottom of this nail, but I didn't know what to add. And now I feel like it looks a little bit unfinished. I don't know. And now let the sculpting begin. So I'm using this nude carving clay because I'm going to be sculpting Helga's head. So I use a little bit of primer and add it to the spot that I'm going to be placing the carving clay onto so that it doesn't move around too much while I'm working on it. This part was a little hard for me because sculpting the faces is just like hard in general. Helga's gonna look a little bit different at the end of this video, by the way, so keep an open mind. Also, I'm using these smaller silicone tools and they're great for sculpting Helga's small face. I found them to be super handy for a smaller job such as this one. I just picked them up from Temu actually. So while I work on Helga, I wanted to talk a little bit more about my personal feelings. I'm going to give a little bit more of a backstory to her in case you don't know. Because I find it so fascinating that these types of topics were discussed in a children's cartoon. It was done so in a way that it wasn't jarring and it wasn't completely obvious. In the cartoon, Helga is a classmate of Arnold. Arnold is the main character of this cartoon, and he's just a little fourth grade boy who is generally very sweet. The cartoon kind of centers around him and his friends, and Helga ends up being his bully. Helga is a bully to pretty much everybody. She's very like standoffish and very defensive and just very angry. Arnold shows her the most kindness, is the most patient with her, and tries to like understand her. For Helga, I think unfortunately she doesn't seem to know how to express her feelings in a way that isn't by being aggressive, because she is so in love with Arnold. She bullies the heck out of him, and it's kind of sad. But what's fascinating to me about her as a character is just, as I said earlier in the video, I see now as an adult how neglected she was at home. Her parents compared her to her older sister. In the cartoon, she has an older sister, significantly older, if I'm not mistaken. And she's a prodigy, basically. I think she's like a pianist. And her parents essentially ignore Helga because she's not as pretty, she's not as talented, she's not as smart. The mom is also an alcoholic, and the way that she's portrayed in the cartoon, she's always napping, drinking these smoothies. You can kind of figure like there's probably a little kick to those smoothies, but it shows how dysfunctional her family is. And I think that Helga's aggression and her anger is a reflection of her frustration with her parents. And I think for me, the way that I kind of relate to her, I know it's like a cartoon, right? But like when we're kids, we kind of see ourselves in what we watch. I mentioned earlier in the video that I myself had to kind of raise myself in a way, and I'm sure, that is a very common occurrence for many of us. I feel like more so for millennials, I'd like to think that parents have tried to do a little more for the younger generations. There is the occurrence though of being raised by an iPad, like the TV turned into an iPad essentially. I feel like for very different reasons, like my feelings about my childhood and the way that I was raised, it's not like a boohoo poor me kind of thing. It's just like what had to happen because there was literally no other option. So it has kind of forced a lot of us to grow up before we should have. The way that I kind of dealt with that frustration, it has taken a lot for me personally to kind of admit to that, because that alone makes it seem like my parents failed in a way. It's not that they failed, it's just that they made mistakes, and sometimes these mistakes were inevitable. And what's helped me is to kind of acknowledge that these things have happened and that I wish things could have been better. I'm also well aware that like my parents were trying their best. They did what they could. And like for me, I wasn't, for very many other reasons, but I was not an angry kid because I had to grow up quickly. I was more reserved. I was more introverted because I just didn't want to cause any friction. I didn't want to you know what I'm saying? So I feel like I'd see a character like Helga and she would almost like frustrate me because I'd be like, why can't she just be chill? Why can't she just have her friends and like be nice to them? They're the ones that are showing her the most kindness. Girl, get it together. But just a little tidbit, I guess, about myself, how I was impacted by some of these cartoon characters, because again, growing up watching a lot of these stories and relating to some of these characters, it's like you can't help but to do so. All right, so for the next nail, I did run out of space in my memory card, so this was shot with my phone. So it was kind of hard to like show you exactly what I was doing, but I did use a mold for this heart-shaped pillow charm that I wanted to make. This is just a mold that I ordered. I think it was from AliExpress. It does have like a corset kind of design on the front, but I do end up using my e-file to sand it off and make it nice and smooth to save some time. And I really do think that it did save me quite a bit of time. I started off with the red gel polish and just adding it to the bottom of the mold, but it actually ends up being like the very top of the charm. You guys know how molds work. And then I pressed some iridescent 3D gel into the mold, and then I used my crazy top to adhere it to the nail. I do end up using Zombie King to smooth everything out. And then over that, I did want to add Helga and Arnold's initials. This heart-shaped pillow is a pillow that I think appears a few times as being on her bed. It doesn't have their initials, but I figured like she's crazy. My girl Helga is a little crazy. I'm sure it's not out of her wheelhouse to have had something like this in her room. So that's what I did. I just humored her and I went in with a super fine detail brush. I put their initials. Also, the verdict on the Zombie King, I'm actually a big fan. It's a lot thinner than I thought it was going to be, but it ends up working out really well, especially for when you want to add that glossy shine without removing too much texture. If you're working on something that's texture heavy, for me, it was the lacy trim around the heart-shaped pillow. I didn't want that to be smoothed out, so I just added a super thin coat of the Zombie King and it worked out perfectly. Moving on. The next nail is the journal nail. This is also something that is very wholesome to me because I do remember journaling being a big part of my childhood, but I do remember that Helga in particular, that was her method of coping and like trying to understand her own feelings and what was going on around her. So I did want to make that prominent in this set. Nail. Oh my gosh, this was so fun to do. So what I did was I started off with 3D gel that I have. This one is just from, I think it's like a Temu brand. I have seen it a lot on Temu and AliExpress. It's Honey Girl, and this one in particular glows in the dark. I believe I've mentioned those 3D gels in the past, and I always mean to show you guys how they glow in the dark, and I always forget. But you can kind of see it while I'm working on this nail. So I basically sculpted out a heart, but I didn't want to make it into a golden locket the way that Helga's locket actually looks. Yeah, I just painted Arnold's picture on there. It was super easy. I really thought it was going to be a lot harder to paint in that scale, and turns out it wasn't that bad. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself. I even gave him a little hat. It's so cute. is the last nail, but this is basically the gum Arnold head for the shrine. I ended up mixing these two carving clays. One was a lot brighter hot pink, the other one was too light of a pink, so I wanted something in the middle. I am using finger gloves. Those are always so uncomfortable, but I always make sure I'm not touching any clay or any uncured gel. Even the ones that show pictures, people handling it with their bare skin, I don't do that. I just don't do that. So I did use my silicone tool and my dotting tool to make that like chewed up texture, which I think worked out pretty well. I also used the fine print 3D no wipe art gel. This one is in the color Slip, I think. And I basically just added chrome over top because they are non-wipe. They're great for chrome. And one eye is actually supposed to be a penny. The other eye is supposed to be a bottle cap. Of course, I wasn't going to be able to put that much detail into these, but I was trying to give the vibe, you know? It's all about the vibe. And then for some reason, Helga sticks Q-tips for Arnold's ears. So that's what I did. It was actually pretty cute. I used some of the like gritty gel. I forget what it's called. It's like a rough gel that kind of gives that texture of cotton or just something like fluffy. I was gonna use flocking, but the rough gel was enough. Like the sand gel, is it called? I think it's called a sand gel. Anyway, it was enough to give that cotton look. I did go in with my e-file just to smooth out the edges and really refine those Arnold hair peaks. And that was basically it, guys. That was so fun to do. I'm excited. I love it so much. These are so fun, and I forget how fun these press-on sets tend to be. Yeah, man, I love it. And I know some of you were requesting that I do more 3D sculpting charm videos, so I'm here to please like this video if you liked it, if you want to see more of this type of sets. So hopefully I'll come up with a few more ideas, especially with Halloween coming up. I feel like my creativity just kind of expands a little further during Halloween. Let me know what you think of this set. If you want to hang out with me in the future, don't forget to subscribe. I'd love to have you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.